Workplace stalking can cause emotional distress for the victim, conflict between employees, and reduce productivity. This terrifying form of harassment can happen to anyone, so it is important to be prepared with strong workplace policies and training programs. What is stalking? Stalking is unwanted and/or repeated surveillance by an individual or group toward another person. Another definition would be harassing or using forms of intimidation that may include following the victim in person or monitoring them. Behavior of stalkers: threatening or harming the victim or their property, friends, family, or pets, damaging the victim's property, waiting around for or following the victim, sending unwanted gifts to the victim's home or workplace, slandering the victim, lying to the victim's employer, family, or friends to obtain information about the victim. It is even common for stalkers to secretly arrange the employment of their victims. There are always new developments in stalking research. Some narrow the profiles of stalkers to fit into 3, 5, and even 7 categories. I choose to focus on the most common stalkers, but encourage you to do research on the subject yourself. No matter what category a stalker falls into, the main thing to remember is if it's fixated, obsessive, unwanted, repeated, it's stalking. For this video, I decided to focus on the 3 main stalker types. The first one would be common or simple obsessional stalkers. The second would be love obsessional stalkers. And the third would be erotomania stalkers. Common, simple, obsessional stalkers. Key points to remember. There was a love relationship between the victim and the stalker. The stalker either seeks reconciliation with the victim or they are seeking revenge. Either way, the stalker will use tactics to frighten or harm the victim. This type of stalking has the highest risk of viable threats and lethal violence. This love relationship is mainly romantic, but could be platonic or one of a family nature. This sort of stalker can also be described as a domestic stalker. Love obsessional stalkers. There was no previous love relationship, but the stalker wants to initiate one. They tend to stalk celebrities, public figures, or someone with a higher social position than themselves. Erotomania stalkers. This often involves a person who has a delusional obsession with a public figure or someone out of the stalker's reach. Erotomaniacs believe that they are in a romantic relationship with their target. They continue these delusions despite evidence to the contrary, which often leads them to stalk their victims. They believe that their victim loves them, but is unable to return their affections due to external circumstances, or that the target returns their love through coded messages. Mental illness is generally associated with this kind of behavior. A good example of this would be John Hinckley Jr.'s assassination attempt on former U.S. President Ronald Reagan. For several years, he stalked actress Jodie Foster by sending unwanted gifts and love messages. The assassination attempt was meant to impress her. Some confuse love obsessional with erotomania stalking. The differences between the two behaviors is the delusions the erotomaniac experiences. How does stalking manifest in the workplace? Here are some examples. Internal stalkers. This would be an employee who stalks another coworker, either on their own accord or by an outside stalker who influences the coworker to do so. If the coworker is doing so on their own, it could be out of jealousy, competitiveness, or romantic infatuation. Stalkers working inside the organization can cause problems for the entire workplace. The stalker can easily gain access to the victim's private information, and other employees may take sides with the stalker and join in the campaign. External stalkers. Predators will influence those within the company and may hack the victim's computer with the assistance of the employees. It is not unusual for them to send unwanted messages or gifts, lurk in or outside the work location, follow them on their lunch break or on their way home. When this sort of activity happens, the risk of violence increases. External stalkers may be related to the victim. In this case, they would be considered a domestic stalker. Domestic stalkers are generally successful in deceiving others to assist in stalking, since they are in some way related to the victim. However, one must keep in mind that if the victim is unaware that they are being stalked, It should be a warning not to assist the stalker. According to the National Center for Victims of Crime, 79% of domestic stalkers will use work resources to target their victims. Business partners of exchange. It is not uncommon for clients, vendors, or contractors of the organization to stalk employees as they already have an established rapport with those inside the company. Their motives for stalking could be of malicious intent or a desire for a romantic relationship. When a victim is being targeted in and outside the work location, they are considered targeted individuals and are being gang stalked and will most likely experience workplace mobbing within the company. For more information on gang stalking and workplace mobbing, watch my videos below in the description box. Psychological harm to the employee is the most obvious negative effect of stalking. When an employee is the victim of stalking, they will likely show a drop in their performance at work. Due to the toxic work environment, the employee may appear nervous and will be unable to concentrate on their work. Victims of stalking may also require more time off than usual. 50% of stalking victims report reducing time at work or even quitting their jobs as a result of the situation. In an unorganized or corrupt work environment, tension is likely to rise if the victim tries to report the stalking activity. Business owners, managers, and the general staff will often deny the stalking activity or minimize the victim's distress by stating that the victim is overreacting. If the workplace stalking becomes violent, the company may suffer financially since legally the organization is responsible. Premise liability refers to the legal theory that a workplace is to blame if violence occurs there. It is up to the organization to reduce hazards to employee safety whenever possible. This is why including stalking in your harassment policy is essential. Employees should be trained to recognize the warning signs of workplace stalking and screen out candidates with a history of violence when staffing. Dealing with premise liability claims in the event of workplace violence can be costly. Stalking is a crime under the laws of all 50 states, the District of Columbia, the U.S. territories, and the federal government. Employers have an ethical and legal responsibility to manage the stalking behavior and to support those who are affected. Many victims of stalking are afraid to address the issue at work out of fear and embarrassment. It is up to the employer to create an environment where employees can feel safe to report stalking activity. It must be made clear that stalking victims are not to be blamed for their predicament, even if the victim had a previous relationship with the stalker. The most important thing is to determine how the victim and other employees can be supported. To reduce the possibility of harassment in the workplace, ensure that all employees understand how to deal effectively with potential problems that may result in stalking situations. Employers should also make sure that employees are made aware of stalking situations and show them how to play an active role in managing the risk. The biggest issue victims face is that their coworkers are not aware of the dangers of stalking. They need to realize that the consequences of assisting stalkers can be fatal. Stalking situations can be more effectively managed if employees are made aware of exactly what they need to do under such circumstances, so training is essential. Take active measures. Have policies and procedures in place that support victims and employees should an adverse event occur. Educate management and employees about bullying and stalking and what they need to do if such situations occur. Develop and enforce policies on what constitutes bullying and stalking at work, either by clients, outside vendors, contractors, or coworkers. Create policies that detail the process for dealing with agitated individuals, suspicious behavior, and for reporting complaints. Install security cameras and secure entrances. I've mentioned this before, but I think it's important that I mention it again, that it must be made clear that the stalking victims are not to be blamed for their predicament, even if the victim had a previous relationship with the stalker. Train receptionists and security guards to serve as gatekeepers by screening those who contact the company for legitimate business reasons or just to unethically gather information. Train management on how to address stalking allegations in a sensitive manner, such as meeting with the victim in a private location and asking non-threatening questions. Establish a workplace environment that is free of judgment. Warn employees of the dangers of disclosing personal information about other coworkers, home addresses, personal phone numbers, work hours, etc. How to deal with staff members who participate in stalking. If an employee reports stalking activity, take them seriously. Address the situation quickly to reduce the impact on the victim, the stalker, and your company. Show respect for both parties when an employee accuses another of stalking. This makes the investigation process go more smoothly. Never rationalize or excuse stalking behavior, regardless of the title or position of the employee who's participating in the stalking. Brushing off reports of stalking not only puts the victim in danger, but also discourages other victims from coming forward in the future. Remind workplace stalking victims to always report harassing behaviors. Documenting these incidences makes it easier to investigate stalking allegations. When investigating stalking in the workplace, never force mediation between your employees. Be sensitive to the victim's feelings. Having to face their stalker can cause further trauma. So only plan a mediation meeting if the victim is willing. During an investigation, be sure to reinforce workplace harassment policies and remind employees of the consequences of breaching these policies. If the accused stalker has a grievance, inform them of the company's complaints procedure. It is important not to take sides with the accused stalker or inadvertently assist in harassing the victim. If it comes to light that an employee is indeed engaging in stalking, do not rationalize or excuse the stalking behavior, but take disciplinary action according to the policies in your company handbook. Keep the issue respectful for both parties, stalker and the victim involved. Provide information to the victim on organizations that support stalking and harassment. Listen to both sides without casting judgment and explain why the decisions are being made. For example, for the stalker, possible suspension, termination, reports to law enforcement, etc. Since it is possible that the stalker arranged the employment of the victim, it is important to understand that if the victim reports stalking activity, that it should be taken seriously, as the stalker is most likely encouraging the staff to act in a harassing manner. The employer or boss may have a friendship with the stalker and may not fully realize the motive of the employment arrangement. Although arranging a job is not necessarily illegal, it is if the arrangement is based on some form of unethical lure, which may be of an exploitative nature. It is highly likely that the employer will minimize the distress of the employee and take sides with the stalker, which will further traumatize the victim. It may be inconceivable to the employer that a family member would stalk or harass another family member, as domestic stalking and family dysfunction are not well understood. When hiring, it is highly suggested to avoid making job offers based on issues other than the skills of the employee. You may be unintentionally assisting in human trafficking. Human trafficking, also known as trafficking in persons or TIP, is a modern-day form of slavery. These terms are used interchangeably and refer to the exploitation of individuals through threat or use of force, coercion, abduction, fraud, and/or deception. It is a crime under federal and international law. It is also a crime in every state in the United States. Avoid being implicated in a federal crime. Do not hire anyone to keep them married, find an employee a marriage partner, to convert to a religion, to attempt to change lifestyle or political views, one-upmanship or to teach them a lesson, sexual favors, or general amusement. In addition, avoid hiring for reasons of race, religion, politics, age, marital status, or any other discriminatory issue. For more information, follow federal and state guidelines. If you or someone you know is a victim of stalking, contact the National Center for Victims of Crime. Also, if you suspect someone is the victim of human trafficking, call the National Human Trafficking Resource Center. Oftentimes, people who are being stalked are indeed victims of human trafficking. I hope this video has been helpful, and I encourage you to share this video with friends, family, and co-workers. Get this information out to as many people as you can, since the issue of stalking is a serious problem, which is destroying the lives of many people. Also, if you have any suggestions on how I can improve on my video and presentations, I would greatly appreciate your comments below. Stay safe.